All right, so for the next couple of weeks, we're just going to go through the stances that I have trained in the very most over the years. And I'm going to give a little spiel about stance training after I go through the specs. So here we go. We'll just do a couple of stances at a time and give you a chance to build them up. So the very next stance, so I'm going to be doing the very most important stances that I've trained in the very most, and some of them are actually more influenced not by the primary teacher I've had, but actually by other sources. And the reasons for that are a little bit complex, but partly it's that Fu Zongwen, who inherited the Yang 108, if you look at the various kinds of Yang 108, the two Yang 108 forms that Yang Fu developed, they're different. And they're different in significant ways. And I just didn't learn that much stance training through the Dongying Qi, T.Y. Peng lineage. My desire to go on. So let's look at the specs, and then I'll let go of all, and I'll let you have all my pedantic rant about stances. So with these next two stances, what you want to do is you want to get your feet shoulder width apart. Do not do the turned in toe version with this one at all. You want them parallel, or if you must, a little bit, opened, but symmetrical no matter what, for sure. And you really need to be mindful, because this one can be really harmful to the knees if you don't do it right. So the stance is, you're already in your Wu Qi posture, this one, and what you do is you just move over sideways until most of your weight is in one foot. And then you're going to keep the ball, your hips and shoulders square. You're just going to turn this coxal joint and lift up these toes. That's all you're going to do. So you're going to feel like opening up these toes wider than you can. Keep these toes straight in line with hip, knees, toes, shoulder, all square. And it's just this back coxal joint you're trying to open up. So the specs look like you're already down, you're already sunk down into your stance a bit. So you've already got a nice depth of stance, all the way over to one side, just turning that coxal joint. And you want to turn it as far as you comfortably can, and then see if you can just use these muscles right here to gently open it up a little more. A little more. It's really important that you keep hip, knees, and toes in alignment on this. If you stance train with your knees in a bad posture, you are doing the exact opposite of anything good for your health. You are damaging your health. So I really emphasize that point, especially arguably on this particular stance, but all the stances. So again, I sink. Let's look at it from the side for a moment. And for the record, I do a lift with some stances, not with all. Short leg, long leg thing is a little bit interesting to learn to work with, but for those of you with such issues, there's a time and a place to not be too pedantic with technical form. So I use a lift for this one. So again, I'm going to drop down. You'll notice my knees are already slightly bent, right? They should be slightly bent all day long, roughly speaking. So then I sink my hips. The low back flattens as the knees bend. You can see my knees have bent, significantly more. You want this guy to all be nice and flat. It should feel nice and flat when you touch back here. And I'm not talking about the musculature, I'm talking about the bones. The sacrum, skeletal, all of these spinous processes at the tip of your spinal cords, or your vertebral bodies rather, all of those guys should, roughly speaking, feel flat to your sacrum, right down here. And then I'm down in there, And I come all the way, let me switch sides for you all because I think this one will be better. I go all the way over to one side, roughly speaking. There's a few pounds in the other foot. And then I lift those toes. You'll feel your body already wants to start turning generally. Mine does anyway. And then I just keep turning that coxal joint, just the coxal joint, keeping hip, knees, and toes back here, and keeping ischial tuberosities, the sitting bones pointed straight down, perineum straight down, keeping this low back flat. And I don't have particularly wide, my short adductors don't open up very wide. I've got really short adductors. So this is actually a particularly challenging stance for my anatomy, and I'm not opening up as wide as one possibly can. There are some people who are capable of turning this coxal joint all the way to 90 degrees from the rest of this. Like everything else is square, and this guy is like, it would be this guy, but you know, the weighted guy. It opens up super wide. Ooh, and me, I can go to about here. And then, you know, the instinct to pull myself open more with that other leg will cause this to come out of alignment. Just resist that impulse. Everything else should be super relaxed. A little bit of a lift, of course, here. It should actually feel more like you're pushing down into the earth subtly with your heel rather than you're lifting your toes up. It's good to pause and feel that for a moment. How can okay, just feel the contrast. I pull my big toe up versus I reach my heel down. It should have a slightly different sensation to it. And the intention of extension is much better than the intention of contraction. And you'll hear me saying things along these lines over and over again. It's a subtlety. The same action occurs, but extension. So one more time, I'll talk through the specs. Centered. I'm going to drop my center to create the shape. I'm going to extend that spine. So all four of your principles should be right there and exploring it. I'm going to relax everything that I can in order to maintain the shape as gently and lightly as possible. And then there is some muscular effort going on in your legs and in your hips as you try and subtly open this guy up. So again, I'll show you one more time. Gather myself at the center. Extension of my perineum to the floor and to my head to the top of the sky. Oof, let go of that elbow. Moving all the way over to one side, keeping directly upright, not leaning. And then lifting those toes. I always start to turn naturally without trying. And then I just extend that turn as far as I comfortably can. It's a piriformis and glute firing thing that's going on. So you will feel a little bit of musculature going on here as you try and push that guy open just slightly more, just slightly more. Yeah, that might be enough of a single stance for this personal one. This particular stance takes a little bit more talky talk in my mind than the next stance. So again, shoulders and hips square. You're really working on opening up that coxal joint right here with the short adductors. See if you can just open that up. Yeah, and then and that's about it. I mean, feel free to ask me questions. Stance training, I'd like to step back now and talk about the value just a little bit. Stance training in particular is a way of developing posture with your intention internally. And it's a really great place to start exploring all four of those principles that we talked about: centeredness, relaxation, downweightedness, extension, right? So when we raise these shoulders, are we lifting them or are we downweighting our chest and sinking them down? Sinking them up is what it feels like. So make sure you got those principles going on. And then what ends up happening is you'll start having these experiences. So last week I was in a lot of pain me see if I can see my form just a little bit better if I get close. All black, not a great choice. So I was carrying, let's see, I need to get square to this thing a little bit. There's a little bit of proportionality, and I tend to lose things. I have a little bit of a symmetry issue on the camera here. But I tend to lift this shoulder up. This is really common with people who have pain. Whichever side they experience more pain on, they tend to lift this shoulder. And even though this is my short leg, this shoulder tends to ride just a little bit high when I'm in a lot of pain. And so last week it was kind of pinching me like this. And I also tend to pinch my neck that way. And it's, again, a pain response. So I routinely stretch and open this stuff. But what you want to do is you want to get in that mirror and look. And I was like, well, what's going on? Last week I had this thing where my elbow was riding high on my right too. When I had corrected those other elements, my elbow was still riding high. And what I found was it was a tension here that I was holding on to as I tried to make the hand posture correct. And so this is a great example of how a mistake can help you learn. My mistakes can help you learn. Is that I went and I checked and I was like, well, what is going on in me? I'm not going to just say, oh, it looks like pain from my upper back. I'm going to go explore this thing. And as you explore it and explore what you can release and what you can hold on to and how to hold on to the minimum, you'll find the things you're holding. And letting go of those tension patterns is literally, arguably, the very most important individual thing that the deep relaxation that comes with all of what we're training in can teach you. If you totally let go, you'll often just fall into the right spot. And we'll talk more and more about that, especially with the Aikido. But when you start talking about Tai Chi and correcting form, what you end up realizing is, oh, I've got this thing that's out of alignment. So now I'm going to use symmetrical training from the ground up, posturally, to create symmetry using stances, unilateral stances, bilateral stances, all of them. And bit by bit, at some point, I'll show you why these stances accumulate towards something valuable. But one of the key points that I would point to, and I'm actually building this lesson right now. So we're going to go through the specs of all the most important stances I've ever learned, and that I have trained in the most over the years. And what's interesting is that if you do it, once we get these in place, we're going to do a session. It's going to take us about a half hour of stance training. And it is going to cause your legs to be a little bit sore. It's going to be an exercisey set. So be prepared for that thought. But what you're going to find if you do it right is that at the end of a good stance training session, your body feels more put together, really more put together. Like you feel like you've been lined up and set in the right spot. So we're going to build to that spot. We're going to look at these stances to get there. And it's just a handful of key stances that I absorbed from a teacher many, many years ago. And, other teachers have talked about this stuff. Again, my personal teachers, my personal teacher I spent the most time with, he didn't spend much time on stance training. He advocated for it, but it wasn't his big thing. Let's see, there was one more little thought I wanted to give. Oh yeah, so after we've learned to put our body together with that stance training set, I'm hoping you'll understand what I'm about to say, which is that functionally, Tai Chi wants you to always have your stance together. What did you just mean, Nathan? Here's what I mean. If you can't hold a single stance correctly, why do you think you're doing the form correctly? Like, why would you think that? So you crystallize moments of the form. All these stances, except that very first one I just showed you, are going to be from the form. And you crystallize and learn a specific point, and you learn how to fill it out. So maybe you've got, I'll just pick a stance at random here, and I'm like, my super sloppy. Exactly what I wanted. So I'm super sloppy, and I'm just kind of lazy or whatever. And then it's like, oh man, okay, let's see, get that right. Already I can feel such a difference in my hip gently, I'm being stretched open. I've got my stance just maybe ever so slightly wide for my intention in this particular demo, but it doesn't matter. So then it's like, okay, well, how can my center create that? Rather than just, I'm going to lift my shoulder up and do this, how can my center go? And then how do I continuously keep that shape together while I'm flowing? Right, so you learn to get that spot correctly, and we will have partner training in this session. I'll convince my wife to come in here and do a set with me. And I'm going to show you how you can be really, really powerful if you line your bones up correctly. And that's a huge part of what you're doing in Tai Chi, is you're learning how to kind of have your bones correctly aligned continuously, so in the Dongying Chi Tai Chi, so that when somebody impacts you, either A, they're not hitting your center so you just flow around and let them fly, or they come and they make impact in such a way that it drops straight into your foot right away and they just hit the earth. That's just like all they run into. And so you want to learn how to have that spot, that hit the earth spot continuously together. And the form will teach you how to do that. It will show you all the shapes that Tai Chi has explored where you keep that form together. And having said that, that therefore means that there's continuously in every single stance a moment where you should be able to have that yang side of the art together, where somebody comes and pushes on that specific point, they hit the floor. They literally, not like they fall, but they run into the bones of the earth through your bones. And that's continuously. It was one of the main things that Mr. Fong used to do for us, is he would have us doing the form and he'd be like, stop. So we'd all stop in whichever stance we were in at that moment. I just did that form backwards. Whatever stance you're in at that moment, you pause, and he'd come over and he'd push on the point that was supposed to be powerful, and he'd show you where it was supposed to be. And then usually if he stops you, the reason he's stopping you is because you're not together. So he'd stop you, he'd pause you, he'd come over, he'd correct your posture a little, then he'd push on the point. And how it is, you're learning and trying to figure out what he's doing. But sometimes it was like a rock. He would just be like, yeah, there it is. And he's pushing on a rock because he's pushing through all these dense minerals down into the floor. Like a fiber optics, the way they bend light, it's the same thing. I'm bending the earth. Avatar reference enjoyable. I'm earth bending when I'm doing this aspect of the art. I'm taking that earth right there, fiber opticking through my whole body out to a connection point. And it can be, there's quite a number of shapes, and we'll explore them all in the Yang 108 form. Yeah, I think that sums up what I wanted to say about stance training. I'll fill in any gaps that I think of as the time goes by, but probably the next few videos should be pretty short, just specs on a few stances, and then we will do the stance training thing. And again, I'll ramble on and be pedantic, and hopefully you'll learn something, and hopefully I'll be reminded of things that I'd forgotten. But anyway, thank you.